Hey, Husker fans, welcome to another episode of the Husker Big Red podcast with Chris Peterson and Danny Gillette. As always, go Big Red.
Good morning, Husker fans, and welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette. And Danny, how you doing this morning, man? I saw your Celtics up 2-0 in the final, so you got to be feeling good about that.
I am feeling good about that, and I'm feeling good overall. I had a bachelor party this weekend, and I'm still kind of recovering. I'm not as young as I used to be, so but we're hanging in. We're hanging in. It's the weather's getting warmer, and the recruiting trail is heating up, and that includes a commitment this past weekend from Pierce Mooberry.
Yeah, we got a new commitment for Nebraska football and a bunch more recruiting nuggets to come here. Some good and potentially some bad ones for Nebraska. So we'll get to that here in just a second. Before we do, though, please make sure if you haven't, do us the huge favor and hit the subscribe button. Make sure that you get into the comment section. Hit the like button. That all helps us out, helps us grow the channel, and helps more Nebraska fans find our great content. Also, please make sure that you're checking out HuskerBigRed.com as well. We have a couple of podcasts, but we also have a lot of content, daily content at HuskerBigRed.com. So please check that out. But yeah, Nebraska football, getting a lot of things happening with the recruiting trail, starting last week with kind of the end of Saturday with Pierce Mooberry coming up with the commitment. Another in-state commitment for Nebraska football with Pierce Mooberry. That's the fifth in this class. And, another three-star guy, but another guy that's ranked, in the top 7 in the state. So they've got 4 of the top 7 players, 6'4", 200 pounds, chose Nebraska over, a bunch of offers from the Midwest, Minnesota, Kansas State, Kansas, Iowa State. So those were some of the other teams in the mix for Pierce Mooberry. And what do you think about what's now the 10th commitment of the Nebraska 2025 class?
Mooberry's a solid player. He has the ability to come down and make plays in the running game. He takes very good angles when it comes to pursuit. He's a solid tackler, and he's a well-developed player, for the high school level. Now the question is, can he take the next step to the collegiate level? And it's interesting just to see, the athleticism that he brings to the table. And for that reason, I think he could be an intriguing fit in this defense. We've talked about this defense being positionless before, and Mooberry is the type of guy that can fly all over the field and make plays. So it'll be interesting to see how he fits in this defense. And like you said, a 3-star recruit, but a very solid player. He's got room to grow, and good on Nebraska for continuing to lock down the in-state targets. And like I've said before, it's worth repeating again. We talked about this 2 years ago. We needed a coach at the time with a good recruiting record and the ability to recruit due to the fact that Nebraska, the state, had strong in-state talent coming up. And, now Matt Rule's kind of putting his money where his mouth is and really emphasizing keeping kids home. And like we've said before, it's hard to at this point get a kid to leave the state with the job that Matt Rule is doing, and he's shown the ability to close the deal. Not just Matt Rule, but the entire staff.
Yeah, he's done a great job. I just think emphasizing the state of Nebraska and keeping, the best players there. And he's just done a great job of, keeping talent in Nebraska, keeping players at Nebraska too, when they've gotten talented players there, Nash Hutchmaker, Ty Robinson, some of those other guys, Jamari Butler, some of those other players that could have, gone to the transfer portal, could have gone somewhere else. And Matt Rule was able to get him to stay. I think he just sells a really great vision for Nebraska. And I do like Mooberry a lot. He plays safety in high school. He's going to play linebacker for Nebraska. I mean, at least the film that I watched, he was playing safety and then some tight end, But yeah, I like what, he brings in coverage. I think he has a chance to play all 3, linebacker spots. Yep. I think he said that Nebraska views him as a will, which I think makes a lot of sense. You think about, like Luke Reimer, a guy who can be in coverage, can do things against the run, but can also, blitz and attack the quarterback.
I think of JoJo Doman in that way too, as well, like that type of player.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he could be that type of player. Very athletic. Kind of fits, the Matt Rule profile of guys. So, This is another big commitment, and number 10 in this class. So I like where they're at. I think they're number 29 overall in 24/7 Sports team ranking. So that's kind of a good place to be. I feel like they have a chance to, maybe put together a top 20 class, but they do need to get some more blue chips in there. I mean, you've got 2 blue chips out of 10, which is kind of how it goes for Nebraska with when you're recruiting a lot of in-state players. But I do like this commitment, and I think it's hopefully will help them, land Christian Jones and Chase Lofton. There's still, and Roman Ziebert's the other one, but those are still the 3 kind of in-state guys that Nebraska's targeted. And Matt Rule, when they've really recruited a guy, from the beginning, they have not. I don't think that they've missed on a single, target in Nebraska. I know they had like the kid that went to Notre Dame last year, but Nebraska offered him kind of late. So I don't think there's been a recruit that I can think of where they've really, got him on campus a bunch of times, offered him early, fairly early compared to other schools, really prioritized him. I can't think of one that they have not landed. So unless I'm wrong, correct me if I am, but
I'm trying to think right now, and I don't believe they're. I
there
don't think so.
Players, some lower ranked players that ended up being maybe takes, but like I think a tight end last year went to Illinois, and some stuff like that I can remember that Nebraska was kind of interested.
Maybe Alex Mansky.
No, he's not an in-state player.
I mean, that's true. Yeah,
he's from Iowa anyway.
Yeah.
So,
I was thinking kids in general that they hadn't landed, that they were really high on. So
yeah, I mean, there's been a few, and I think there's going to be about to be some others, and we'll talk about that in a second.
Not many though. Not many.
But yeah, in terms of the in-state kids, they haven't missed on any that they've truly prioritized as like a top of the board, type of kid. So I think that says a lot about Matt Rule and this coaching staff, and we'll see how that plays out over the next few weeks, because I do think that is going to be tested here with Chase Lofton and with Christian Jones. So we've got kind of a bunch of recruiting nuggets. Not much else really going on right now with Nebraska sports. There were some NCAA championships over the weekend, track and field, but for the most part, we're kind of into the off season with everything, with all of the I guess the school year sports, for lack of a better term. But on the recruiting trail, things are really starting to pick up in June. And I guess to start with, one of the top targets on the board, one of my top targets on the board for Nebraska is Chase Lofton. He visited Florida State on Saturday, or over this past weekend. Steve Wiltfong did some interviews with him. It was posted on the Florida State On3 message board, but got over there and got some of the information. So Chase Lofton said that Florida State really set the bar high in his visit. He said that they would be a great option for him. These are quotes from Chase Lofton. And then he said he will be making a decision soon, which I take to be after, he still has 2 more visits to take to Texas A&M and to Nebraska. So I take soon to mean later this month or, early July. There's a lot of commitments that happen in early July after guys take all their visits. So, but yeah, after visiting Missouri and Florida State, what are your thoughts on Chase Lofton and his commitment timeline?
I don't know if it favors Nebraska. I know he's coming the 21st. Nebraska's going to have to make the most of that visit. I understand you want to take as many athletes as possible, but just looking at the tight end room overall, there's not a lot of room there. And I feel more comfortable saying that Missouri is probably going to land him, but I hope I'm wrong, and I could be wrong. Again, it's not that I don't want him. I just don't see from a numbers standpoint, where he would fit. And also, I think Missouri has a lot of cash. I mean, you heard Troy Dannon actually say last week, I believe it was, that Nebraska was maybe at a little bit of a disadvantage in terms of NIL. So I think those two things, the crowded room and lack of NIL, are going to work against Nebraska. But I certainly wish Lofton the best.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm not worried about the crowded room at all. I mean, that's because Thomas Fidoni's good. By the time Chase Lofton gets here, I don't think that's going to be an issue. And he's 6'6", 300 or 215 pounds. So yeah, I'm not worried about that at all. He'll have a place, especially, down. I mean, because most of these freshmen aren't going to play the first year. So you have to think about 2 years down the road, and what the depth chart might look like in that situation. But yeah, I think we'll see what happens. Missouri definitely has some NIL money. But I mean, I don't really see much, a ton of momentum from them coming out of it, but we'll see. I think all of these schools have a chance, but I still think the ball's in Nebraska's court. I feel pretty about the same way I did, with Carter Nelson. Not even, I mean, Carter Nelson visited Georgia and got some, projections for Georgia, and that kind of got people talking. And we haven't even seen anything like that. I don't know if, if Steve Wiltfong drops a bomb for, Missouri or Florida State or something, but I don't know. I still, this will be his 9th visit to Nebraska when he takes his official visit. He hasn't visited one of these schools more than twice. So that would be quite an upset, in my opinion, if they were able to pull that off. So I still, if I had a crystal ball, I'd put it on Chase Lofton. I know nobody has yet, but that's, until somebody beats Matt Rule for one of these recruits, I'll believe it when I see it. And that's kind of how I think about Chase Lofton. Now, Christian Jones, I think there's maybe a better chance of one of these other schools landing him, but he's going to be visiting this weekend. And now I think that they did that on purpose. And so you have, Christian Jones can, be your focus this weekend. Chase Lofton. I know they've got some other big guys like Corey Sims, but I just don't think that's happening. I don't think Corey Sims or, I'm trying to think of the other wide receiver.
Yeah, I am too.
Florida.
I'm blanking right now.
But at any rate, I mean, I just don't feel great about any of those guys. I know Michael Terry was at Texas this weekend, and he said that he had a great visit. And I think that they're still in a good spot, for Michael Terry. But, it's going to come down to, I mean, when guys say it's going to come down to NIL, I don't know if that's going to be a win for Nebraska. And he mentioned that being in one of their top 2 things. Now, like I said before, I don't think a guy goes on an official visit and doesn't have an idea what the NIL package is going to be. So I don't know. It's tough. It is really tough in this era of NIL. But in terms of, like bad news for the Huskers, they did miss a commitment over the weekend. Broderick Scholl, who was one of the top guys on the board at offensive tackle, committed to Auburn. And he said that, that just goes to show. I mean, after the Nebraska visit, Nebraska and Auburn were co-leaders, right? According to Broderick Scholl, and now they took a visit there, and so he's committed to Auburn. So that shows how quickly things can change from one visit to another. That's why I still feel good about Nebraska having the final visit with Chase Lofton. So I guess we'll see there. But
Cortez Mills was the other wide receiver we were thinking of, I believe.
Yeah, Cortez Mills. So, and then they've got a few other, receivers that they're kind of looking at. So it's not that they desperately need a receiver or anything. But yeah, and that, Cortez Mills already took his visit. And so I think that I think it was smart to try to shoot their shot with him, and I don't really, like I said, I really don't think they have a shot with Corey Sims. I think they have less of a chance with Corey Sims than they do with Cortez Mills. That's just, I know he's ranked a little bit lower, but that's just my read on it. And, you talk about a kid that's from Missouri, like Missouri's definitely going to pay a boatload of money to keep that kid. They have the last official visit, but he's went to Penn State and USC, coming to Nebraska this weekend, and then Missouri. So I mean, you never know if they could land one of those receivers, Michael Terry or Mills or Sims. That would be awesome. But I wouldn't hold my breath, and I also wouldn't hold my breath for Dawson Merritt either after his visit to Alabama this weekend.
Yeah, I would have a hard time believing that Mills would even leave the state. I know Miami is putting a bunch of pressure on him, and they're really recruiting him hard. And he's been to a couple camps, obviously, down there. And so Cortez Mills is going to be a hard pull. And quite honestly, it was always going to be a hard pull because, these Florida schools get a firsthand look at him rather quickly. So, wide receiver is not necessarily a position of need, but it would have been nice to add either Mills or, even a guy like Terry, who you're kind of unsure where he stands in terms of Nebraska. I know he said he really liked it here and the visit was great, but, a lot of them say that. So overall, I'm not too worried about the wide receiver position. I am a little bummed on Dawson Merritt, though. I mean, it's hard to say no to Alabama. But I think that makes the Christian Jones visit this weekend or in the next couple of days even more important. And so I think, they will get a linebacker is my prediction. And, I feel good about Christian Jones coming to to Lincoln, but we'll see. I know he's taken a couple visits, and I think there has been some question in the past as to whether he's worthy of his, ranking. I've watched his highlights and, seen a little bit of his film, and I believe he's a really good player. So there may be some misses in this recruiting cycle. Don't freak out. This is what happens when you recruit with some of the bigger programs. And as it stands right now, it's not like the cupboard is bare. We have a solid foundation for the 2025 class, and I think that's something to kind of keep in mind too, because by the time last season started, the 2024 class was pretty wrapped up. And so as we look towards 2025, I think it's going to be, I think we're probably going to see a couple of commitments, and then maybe, some more action, towards the fall. But overall, it's a pretty solid class. And, just like last year, players want to see what this team is going to look like. And if Nebraska starts winning, and I feel like we've said that quite a lot over the last couple of years, then that will pick up recruiting as well.
Yeah, and Raheem Hutchins Jr.
Yep.
is another receiver to know. So, I mean, if things don't go the way Nebraska wants with like Mills and Corey Sims and those guys, I think he's the next guy up, because they do have some receivers already in this class. So it's not like they're desperate for them in terms of, the numbers or whatever. So keep an eye on him. He's supposed to take a visit. He's got the top three of Nebraska, Houston, and Memphis. So I feel like this is a situation where Nebraska, is trying to figure out whether to take him or not. And so if he does end up being a take, scholarship wise, compared to, some of the other guys that they miss, he is still another player to kind of be aware of. But yeah, Christian Jones is another, important prospect, 149 overall in the 24/7 composite rankings. Nebraska's the crystal ball leader right now. I feel like he's taken a visit to, he just visited Auburn, or USC. I'm not sure. Yeah. Let's 24/7 says he has him going to USC and Auburn, so I'll have to double check which place he actually went last weekend. And then visiting Nebraska and then Oklahoma after this. I think it's USC. I think it's USC, Oklahoma, and Nebraska are the top three teams, I want to say. So, out of those three, I mean, I still feel pretty good. Oklahoma's probably the one that worries me a little bit more, but, Nebraska, I think, has recruited him really hard. He talked about, in-state recruits like about a year ago and how Matt Rule's kind of prioritized that. So it's kind of the same thing with Lofton. He's a national recruit, and they're, taking their visits and, doing all that stuff. But I still think at the end of the day, getting them on camp, they're still going to have to say no to Matt Rule. And I just feel like he makes it really hard to do that with everything that Nebraska's offering and all the in-state stuff, the in-state poll. So, push come to shove, I think Nebraska's going to get, I still think this month they'll get Christian Jones and Chase Lofton. Maybe not this calendar month, but I think those visits will seal the deal, and they'll get those. I think they'll get those two guys. They'll get all their in-state targets. Roman Ziebert, maybe not. Maybe they won't get him. But I definitely think those top two guys. It's not like I'm overly confident. I just haven't seen anything from the other places to tell me that, he's going to go elsewhere. Like Dawson Merritt, there's been expert projections to Alabama. And, that kind of always worried me. And he doesn't have that in-state tie. You know what I'm saying? So I think that does make a big difference. But in terms of Lofton and Jones, I'm still feeling Nebraska as of right now.
Jones visited USC this weekend, and he's going to visit Oklahoma June 21st through the 23rd. So we're sandwiched in the middle. In terms of recruiting, I always like it when Nebraska has the last visit on a recruit's kind of recruiting, visit tour. But, I still think Nebraska has a chance to, I think they have a better chance of, like I said earlier, landing Jones than they do Lofton. I would love both, but at the same time, positionally, we are better set up at both the tight end and linebacker positions to where, the cupboard is not going to be completely bare if we miss on either. I don't think we'll miss on either, but it goes back to having depth and being prepared. And just in his first year, Matt Rule and his coaching staff did a nice job of stocking the cupboard and, making sure that there was depth at positions and also recruiting at a high level in the meantime.
Yeah, and they, they worked a bunch of camps this weekend, so there's a ton of new offers that went out. I want to say that there's been like 15, probably over 15 offers. So not really going to go through all of those, but they did offer some more quarterbacks. They've been they actually have hosted, I think Will Anderson, who I want to say
Yep.
is Daniel Kalen's. He came up and started after Daniel Kalen.
Yep.
But at any rate, so that'll be interesting. In 2026 quarterback recruiting, they definitely need to get going because they're behind the 8 ball. There's no question about that. They're behind the 8 ball with 2026 quarterback recruiting. Notre Dame, a bunch of other schools have already taken quarterbacks. I mean, a lot of schools have got guys on campus for visits, top targets. Nebraska is just in this jumbled mess of like 20 quarterbacks that they've offered. So they really need to start drilling down and focusing in on 2 or 3 or 4 guys because I mean, I know that they've obviously got, 3 Elite 11 quarterbacks in the last 2 classes, but they're behind the 8 ball with 2026 quarterback recruiting. There's no bones about that.
I'm not too worried yet. I mean, I think we have a lot of talent in the quarterback room right now. I get trying to be, keep adding for the future and keep recruiting, but I think they'll get it done. I think they'll get it done. I would be a little bit more worried had TJ Lateef not committed, then there would be a definite scramble. I'm not too worried about the position right now. Like you said, they do seem to have, 1,000 quarterback offers out, but I wouldn't be too worried about the 2026 quarterback recruiting quite yet.
Yeah, I mean, I just look at it, with each class, and I just know you want to have, your quarterback in, like, if you're going into next summer still needing a quarterback, then you really have lost the ball and or dropped the ball, and the timelines are getting so accelerated right now. I think a lot of the top 10 a few of the top 10 quarterbacks in 2026 have already made their decisions, and they're already. So I'm just saying if they want to get one of those good players, they really got to get going. But I think they're trying to figure things out. I think they're trying to evaluate, Dayton Raiola, who's coming for a camp, Will Anderson. And there's not as much pressure to get a highly ranked guy, but, I just still think you want to get I don't think that Georgia, is going down there and being like, well, we already got 80 top 100 players. Let's just get, they're trying to get the best players every single time. And
well, Georgia's also an easier sell. I mean, they can afford to do that.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, I think that's the way that you should recruit. You get the best players that you can possibly find, whenever you can. And then
for sure.
You let it sort out the rest when they get there. That's
for sure. Yeah, for sure. But at the same time, we were 5-7 last year. We don't have as much pull. So I think, like you kind of mentioned there, they're probably evaluating Dayton. They're probably evaluating Will Anderson. So I think honestly, for the 2026, cycle, taking their time and evaluating the options they have is going to be important.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, but a lot of the top quarterbacks, these summer visits are really important, and we're getting into June, and you got to get some of these kids on campus. So, I mean, that's all I'm saying. I think they just they need to, they kind of lucked out with TJ Lateef, and that kind of worked out late, but usually got to get going a little bit earlier. So we'll see how that works out, how that priority works out.
And who knows? They may already be working on something that we don't even know about.
Yeah, potentially it could be. I do like Anderson and Raiola, but there's a reason why Dayton Raiola is unranked right now. So he's got a lot to prove out there as well. So all right. Well, with that, I think we'll wrap up the show there, you guys. So please make sure again to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, check out HuskerBigRed.com, and as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.